A lot of people with our politics want support more content moderation and more limits on what can be said on Twitter and different platforms. As someone who's been gone after, been censored, what's your position on that?
I'm close to a free speech absolutist. I think that it's a huge slippery slope. I mean, because going back to the 2016 DNI report, Katie, because you had me on your show when the Russiagate stuff was really coming full steam. And my show, Breaking the Set on Russia Today, that ended 2 years before Trump got elected, was wrapped up into this whole Russiagate hysteria and actually blamed in part for Trump's election as part of the Russian disinformation campaign. And I was accused of sowing discord and fomenting radical discontent in this country by simply covering third parties, interviewing Jill Stein, talking about police brutality, covering Occupy Wall Street. This is so dangerous to me. So I was so acutely aware of this that long ago that I knew that this was the beginning of something horrible. It would snowball and spiral out of control. And so I've just kind of seen how awful it's gotten. And I'm not surprised because I was on the receiving end of this so long ago, but I am just very alarmed at how many people don't understand how the hammer will always fall down on you. It doesn't matter who you are. If you are an independent content creator and you are simply opposing corporate media narratives, that is construed as fake news. You can be accused of towing the Russian line. We all know this. We've probably been lumped in with like a proper not, some front group that's accusing us of this already. There's that black box algorithm on Hamilton 68 dashboard. There's all these Twitter accounts that already do this, right? Label people as Russian disinformation if you are simply criticizing US foreign policy or going against the mainstream line. And to push these people into like alternate lanes of reality and tiers of the internet where they just don't exist because they offend liberal sensibilities is such a dangerous future. Because what is that going to do to society? What does that do to our collective consciousness? It's like I fear the future where that's just going to be encouraged and accepted even more. Because it's already purged so many people. Like, as I mentioned, I mean, people who are simply like Chavista talking about the Venezuela coup, people who are pro China. Like, why is Twitter doing the bidding of the US government? Why
Right.
is it that before there was any laws in place that Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were acquiescing to the US government and saying, okay, we're going to change our algorithms? And we know what the effect of that was, that Google changed its algorithms back then. And all of these websites are now obsolete. Counterpunch, World Socialist website. I mean, Project Censored. It's like you have to go to like page 20 on Google search results to even find anything other than like your corporate media narratives. And that's really dangerous for people who are just simply getting introduced to media literacy and a critical media education. Because how do you do that? How do you self teach these skills if we certainly don't learn them in school? When I was in college, I was able to find out a lot of stuff online, which led me to the trajectory I am today. But like people today, I find it really baffling because they've already censored us to such an extent where they've already curated our reality to such an extreme degree, but we just don't realize it.
Right. Yeah.
And that to me is just as scary as whatever censorship they're bemoaning about China or anything else.
Right. China. Yeah.
China,
Yeah. It's
China.
China.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, before we even started, there was already somebody saying that we should be. Before we even said one word, there were people like, "Well, you're talking about censorship of Palestine. It's like, why aren't you talking about China?" I'm like, you didn't even wait for the show to start, officer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Officer, you gotta wait for the show
Yeah.
to start. Don't put it in the pre-show
Yeah.
chat.
Right,
I know
exactly.
you're
Yeah, right.
clocking
You
in
didn't
there,
know, actually. And
officer.
this brings us to the next question I was going to ask. What about China? For all they know, that's coming next.
My brother said this on the last. People should check out Media Roots Radio. It's our podcast. But he said we are Jeffrey Dahmer on steroids times a million. That is what the U.S. government
Right.
has done just in the last 20 fucking years.
Right.
How many
Yeah.
millions of people's blood is on this government's hands? How many tens of millions of people have been expelled from their homes, maimed, lives destroyed? And you have the fucking audacity to talk about China? To talk about China when you actually know nothing about this country. You are ignorant of their politics, their culture, their economic system. The vast majority of people hammering and harping about China constantly are completely ignorant about what's going on in China, and they don't give a shit about their own government. Look in your own backyard, fix your own backyard, because this government's a genocidal entity that has just total bloodlust, and we need to stop it. Because I mean, how many countries are under the boot of US empire and imperialism, right? I mean, look at the bases around the world, 700 plus bases, tens of millions of people affected by this. It's just absolutely beyond the pale. A million dead in Iraq alone. Look at Syria, look at Libya, look at the coups in Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't stand it. It's like, yes, I wish that I could do something to just wave a magic wand and end all oppression all around the
Right.
world. But guess what I can do? I'm an American citizen. I'm an empire baby. And what I can do is actually resist my government, because all of the people around the world who are living under the boot of imperialism are looking to us saying, what the hell is wrong with you? Can you please form some sort of movement to stop your government from oppressing me?
But Abby, what if they're actually saying, Americans, can you please, for the love of God, do something about China? Maybe that's what they really want from us. I mean, we're getting all these comments. Maybe they are in these foreign countries, and they're saying actually what Americans need to do is talk about China. I wonder if they're on Chinese YouTube streams telling them to talk about America, or America's involvement in Israel and Palestine, or it's just so strange that like there's that constant deflection, and people are just very excited about like having a good bad guy to point to, and it's and it seems like because China seems so because we have all those stories maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, about how powerful China is. Now it doesn't feel like racist to talk about China, to slot in China into like the Iraq position, or like the Afghanistan position, where you're just saying, or the North Korea position, right? Like, well, you know, if when you start saying we need to do something about North Korea, we need to do something about Iraq, most reasonable people will kind of say like, why? Like, well, they're not that big a deal. But when you say China, it's like, well, I've been hearing about China's going to take over the world for the past 20 years economically, so now maybe that is a problem.
Yep, China, Russia, two nuclear armed powers that pose no threat to us whatsoever, but because they are economic competitors with this government, and which has been articulated as such very blatantly by Tony Blinken and all of these other people.
Right.
The NATO conference that just happened, this is all articulated in their own documentation. It says these are global competitors that need to be dealt with, because we need to impose our global order, right? This is the big deterrent from US hegemony taking over the planet, is China and Russia. It's outrageous. This is what propaganda does. It melts people's brains, and it really just deflects from the problems of your own government. When your government is a mass murdering entity, when your government is illegally occupying dozens of countries, when your government is engaged in warfare, mass murder, and also has Guantanamo Bay still open, that's rectally force feeding inmates that are innocent.
Actually,
and you actually have the audacity to talk about concentration camps in other country. It's amazing. It's amazing how well and effective propaganda works, because people will actually conflate the two. And I find it really fascinating when China's the one who's being bombarded with the war games, the threats, the constant propaganda of, you know, U.S. warfare and U.S. domination. And it's just unbelievable. We're in a global pandemic. We need global cooperation. And here we are talking about how China needs to be dealt with. And it's just disgusting that these are the people who are elected to represent us. And we're all just cannon fodder for the capitalists. You know, it's just like, it's unreal. But yeah, it really is just a big old deflection, you know, and that's really what it comes down to. People who are too babyish to deal with how genocidal their own government is, because then it makes the impetus fall on their shoulders, where they actually have to do something about it. So it's much easier to just say, well, China.
Yeah.
And if we're not the empire, then China, you know, and they would fall in place, and then they do this and that. It's like, no, that's insane. No one has to be the empire.
Right.